Pero como estamos grabando este Meetup, cuando publiquemos la charla va a tener una transcripción en castellano para las personas que han tenido dificultades en algunos momentos para comprender algunas partes de la charla. ¿Okay?
Hablo poquito español.
Just saying that because we are recording the talk.
Yes.
We're going to create a transcript of
Awesome.
of you.
Yeah, I got that much.
Great. So you take that?
Yes.
Más o menos. Hay hartos ahí ustedes.
So, hi.
Hola.
My name is Joost. And I founded a company called Joost. And my first advice of today is, don't start a company and give it your own name. Because you might grow up in a company that has 100 employees that we have now. You hear your own name the entire day, and you still keep responding to it. So, let's see. It works. So I think it was my wife that was talking to you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was your wife.
Yeah, that was my wife and my boss. The funny thing was she gave you a talk title without talking to me about the talk title. So I was like, here, you go talk about that. Okay, I'll go do it. Let me see if this works. If not, I'm just going to... So I founded Joost. We are now a company of 100 plus people, mostly based in the Netherlands. This was earlier this year. And JoostCon, our own conference. And we are from the Netherlands. Surprisingly, most people seem to think that we're American.
Yeah.
But no. We are actually somewhere there. It was quite the flight. All the people you saw in that picture are based in one small town called Visita in the Netherlands, which has about 40,000 people. A bit like Cusco 40 years ago. It's very small. It's very everybody lives close. It's rural Netherlands, but there's no such thing. And then we have about 20 other employees that live all over the world because they're our support team and they answer our customers' questions. And we try to do that within the hour, and that's kind of hard to do that from just the Netherlands, so we just go from time zone to time zone. So as I said, I'm Joost. I'm now the Chief Product Officer at Joost, and I'm the marketing lead for WordPress.org. I started doing that recently, so if you suddenly see WordPress.org become a bit more modern in the way it looks, then I've done my work right. But most of all, I'm the husband of Marika, who you were talking to, who's now the CEO of Joost. And I'm a father of 4 kids, and I'm actually here in Peru with all of them for the wedding of a good friend of ours. She's Dutch, he's Peruvian, he was a guide on the Inca Trail. It's a very romantic story, and they met, and we're going to see them get married next week. So that's why we're here. I'm going to be walking the Inca Trail tomorrow morning, so I have to get up way too early and and walk a lot in high altitudes that I'm not used to. But we'll see how that goes. So at Joost we say that we do something that's called SEO for everyone. Basically what we want to do is we want to allow you to compete no matter how big you are. Whether you're that small person that has just that single person company or that huge corporation. I mean, we have customers like Disney who use Joost SEO on like 400 sites. But we also have a lot of customers that have small sites for just local businesses. And all of them are equally important to us. We want you to be able to compete, to annoy the big guys with your small site, and basically to be on the same level with them. And you are, because if you're installing Joost SEO free, you're basically using the same SEO functionality that Microsoft is using for most of their sites, because most of their sites are on WordPress now, that Walt Disney is using, that a lot of these large companies are using. We also don't really care whether you're paying us or not. That may sound weird, but we have a lot of users and only a small portion of them pay for our premium product, and we're absolutely fine with that. If I wanted to make hundreds of millions of dollars, I would have done other things in my life. It's not what we are interested in the first place, although we're not doing that either. So don't feel bad for us. We currently have 9 million plus installs of Joost SEO, which makes me quite scared every time we do a release. Because when we release an update and we break something, we break a lot of websites. So yeah, it's a lot, it's weird. It's also, if you look at like the top 1 million sites in the world, it's about 14% of them run Joost SEO. It's really a scary number. I'm going to go quickly through some of the SEO issues I think we've solved in the last decade as Joost, but as WordPress in general and other SEO plugins as well. And doing that by splitting up SEO in two things. We've got technical SEO and we've got content SEO, like the writing and all the other stuff. And we have decided in how we look at it to split it up slightly differently into discovery, indexing, and ranking. Where is it on your site or on the web? What is it? And how good or important is it? These are the questions that search engines ask themselves. They're literally the questions that they ask us when we talk to them. Okay, so how do we classify this? This is how search engines look at their process. So we've started looking at it the same way as they do, because that makes it a lot easier for us to talk to them. So in discovery, we've done a lot of different things. If you have been on the web for a while, then you might have, way back in the day, submitted your URL sometimes to be indexed by a search engine. I know I've done that somewhere in 1994 when I built my first website. I literally had to submit it manually to, I think it was AOL search at that time, and a couple of others. But so that was where it started. Then we got search engines like Google that went through links. And then we started creating things like XML sitemaps that we have in Joost SEO, which, to be honest, is some of the most horrible things ever to build into a CMS. Because it breaks under all sorts of circumstances, no matter what you do. Now, luckily, we're now working with both Google and Bing to directly submit content into their index when you publish it. So we're getting very close to the point where if you hit publish, we will send the data to Google and Bing, and we will give you a green light within like 3 to 4 seconds of, hey, your content is now in the index, and you can search for your own post. That's very cool, but also slightly scary, because we can also delete stuff at that speed. So, go ahead, sit down. But for us, discovery is very much the solved problem. It's something that we've been doing for so long, we don't have to think about it. And we have indexing, so we have stuff like your content and your metadata, your titles, your descriptions, all that stuff. We've got our solutions for that. Other SEO plugins have their solutions for that. Everyone does it differently. We have a process called canonicalization. If you know what rel canonical is, then I don't need to tell you this, but basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to give search engines one version of every page that we say, hey, this is the version that you should look at. Now, you're all Catholic, right? Or something like that. Canonicalization is a very poorly chosen word. Because I don't know whether you've read the Bible, but I see 4 versions of the same story in the Bible. So why do we call it canonicalization when we say that we only want one version? The sad part is that it's often very true as well, but this happens. You have a lot of versions of a page and you don't really know what the best version of a page is. So we try to do that automatically because no normal user will ever understand this process. But you might run into this. If you build a website, you might have like, hey, these 2 pages are almost the same, but not entirely. It's a very hard problem to really solve for everyone all the time. But I think with Joost SEO, we're quite close to the best we can get. Then we have this new thing in a lot of websites where people build websites that are slightly too dependent on JavaScript and other things. So what the search engine sees in the first time that it looks at a page is not what the search engine is supposed to see, because people use JavaScript to get content into that page. That's very annoying and very bad for search engines. Luckily, most WordPress sites don't do that. And I would really urge you to not go into that too deeply, because using too much JavaScript on the front end of your website is really, really, really going to hurt your SEO performance. And then we've got, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of things like hreflang. If you do multilingual sites, then you'll need hreflang. If you don't do multilingual sites, be happy, because this is like the stuff that breaks my head all the time. But we've solved all of this. So for a normal website, I dare say that indexing is very much a solved problem. The problem is ranking, because ranking goes basically on this. You need to have a good website, which is so much easier said than done. And we're looking at that from a lot of different perspectives. So we've been working a lot on helping people make better internal links and a better site structure. We're still working on that, because actually WordPress makes that quite hard. Because up until recently, all the things we had to parse to figure out what you were linking to within your own site was really, really annoying. Now luckily, with Gutenberg, and now in phase 2 of Gutenberg, menus also coming into blocks. All we have to do is parse all the blocks on your site. And suddenly we know inside your site what you're linking to. So for us, phase 2 of Gutenberg is a blessing. Although it will be quite painful, I guess, before we'll be there. It's supposed to roll out through this year. So by the end of this year, we should have blocks in basically everything. So no more widgets, no more sidebars, no more headers with navigation menus that work differently. Everything is a block. And for us, that's we look forward to that. Because at that point, we can really see what you're doing on your site and see every link that you have and everywhere you're pointing links to. This is the thing that we can't do anything about. So by installing a plugin, I can't help you get more links. So you'll have to do that yourself. And yes, they still matter. Everything else, we can help you with, but it's up to you. So we have something called the content analysis in Joost SEO. We have the SEO scoring with our green bullets. If you use Joost SEO, I see some of you nodding, so you might know it. Then you know that we give a score for how well you've optimized your text. We've also been working more and more on the readability analysis of Joost SEO. So we try to give you advice, a lot like what Microsoft Word has been doing for so long, on how to write better text. I think Spanish is actually one of our better languages in how we do that. English is by far the best. Spanish is also slightly hard because I have no native Spanish speakers in my team back in the Netherlands yet. But we're working on making this available for more and more languages. What we do with that is really tell you how to write better text. And that's very specific text because that's text for the web. So stuff that's easy to read and easy to understand for people. It's not meant to write literature in, so please don't compare it with that. It really is meant to help you write short sentences that people can understand and that people can really quickly grasp. So we're trying to do all these things, and then of course we do that in WordPress. We do it in a couple of other platforms, but as this is a WordPress meetup, I won't mention the other ones. But if you're on WordPress, your content will be discovered, will be indexed, but to get it ranked, you need to do other stuff. And you need to build that quality. And that's something where we've been working recently a lot on things like rich snippets. And rich snippets is what we call search results that don't look like a standard blue link with black text, but that have something more. So these are recipes, and Google just automatically grabs all these. If you search for recipes, I don't honestly know how well it does this in Spanish, but in English there is no normal result in here anymore. You need to have all the markup in place for Google to be able to make this out of your result, or you will not be there. So that's based on something called schema. And this is probably one of the most horrible sites on the web that also describes one of the most important standards on the web. Why is this horrible? Well, if you talk about schema.org recipe, the URL for that is schema.org/recipe, but only with a capital R. Because if you write it with a lowercase r, it'll give you a 404. Had they built it on WordPress, it would have automatically redirected, but of course they didn't. But this describes what a recipe should look like in terms of metadata. And it does this not just for recipes, but for thousands of things. And people have been doing this for a while, and some sites are very, very good at it. If you look at this site, this is the #1 recipe site for terms like lasagna recipe and other things. You're going to be scared by how much, this is the metadata that they've marked up for one recipe. It's seriously one recipe, and every ingredient is in there. Every step in the cooking process is described in metadata. The problem with this is that it's very hard to do for normal users. How would a normal user know how to do this, and why would they even need to know how to do this? To us, that's a problem that we would like to fix. And for Google, that's a problem they'd like to fix. The reason they're doing this, and they need all this metadata, is because they want to be able to have your Google Home tell you what your next step is that you need to take while cooking. The thing can literally talk you through cooking lasagna. The only way it can do that is by having all those steps curved up so nicely that it can go through those steps. The problem we see is that schema is becoming a requirement for ranking. If you're in the recipe space and you don't have schema, you're not ever going to win anymore. But this is going to happen for a lot more types of results. And that is partly due to Gutenberg. Because with Gutenberg, we now suddenly we no longer have this whole block of text that is an article. But every paragraph, every video, every image in there can have metadata. So if you have Joost SEO now, we have an FAQ block. It's a bit hard to read. We have an FAQ block. If you add that to a post and you use Gutenberg, then you can just put in questions and answers. And Google will parse those as separate entities. Now we're working with Google to make this better because their schema markup ideas for this are horrible and we're trying to improve them. But what this does is it gives you a very simple block. You just type in, I want to add an FAQ. And you start typing your FAQ, and nowhere do you even see the word schema, because we don't tell you that. But it adds all the schema in the back. So what this allows Googlebot to do is to go through such an article and just realize what everything is. It can realize a lot better what's on those pages by doing that. Now we were building this and we worked with Google quite closely on a lot of these things because by now we've got so many sites running SEO that if we change things they notice, and that's good for both of us. But what we were running into is that all of these structured data solutions, I don't know, who here has ever used Google's structured data testing tool? It's quite a hard thing, but what it produces is a lot of different blocks. So you'll have a page that looks like this, and in the Google structured data testing tool, it will look like this. It's all these different things, and these are all on one page. Now this might seem very interesting, but the question here is, if this is all on this page, what is this page about? We're giving Google metadata by loads, but we're not telling it how it relates to each other. We were in a call with Pinterest a couple months ago, and they were actually saying on WooCommerce sites, when there's a product and 3 or 4 related, WooCommerce automatically outputs all that metadata for all those products. And Pinterest could not figure out what the main product on that page was because all the products, the main product and the 4 related products, all have the same markup. So they had 5 of these for 5 different products, and Pinterest went like, okay, so what's the main product? What should we show? So we had to go one step deeper and solve that problem too, which we actually did 2 weeks ago. And by building something that is very scary, but also, I think, very awesome, we're actually relating all those things to each other. So now, if you use Joost SEO and you see something like this, this is an article we published 2 days ago, I think. If you run it through the Google structured data testing tool, you'll see that it's not like all these different blocks. It's an article, that's what it is. But you'll also see that there's a load of metadata. There's an article that is part of a web page, that is part of a website, that is published by us, by Joost, who are also this and this and this, written by this author. And all of that is connected to each other. So we now automatically output all that metadata, but we also connect it to each other. So we literally do a connected dots of how does this relate to each other. And with that, we can make it a lot better after this. Because now I can suddenly say on a product page, And we do that actually if you run our WooCommerce add-on. This is the main product, and these are the related products that you're seeing. And suddenly, Pinterest doesn't have that problem anymore. The funny thing is, we tried to do this without you seeing anything. So we did one of the biggest releases I think we've done in the last 2 years, and we changed one setting in the backend that you can now choose slightly differently. But other than that, there's no changes that people need to make, because this is all automatic and all done fully automatically in the backend. I think this is going to be very exciting. We've only just launched this 2 weeks ago, and we're already seeing stuff happening to people's search results. If you search for my name or my wife's name, you'll get a knowledge panel on the right-hand side in the search results with who we are and what we do, etc. Not something you get for every person, but it's happening for more and more people. And suddenly for us, more information started popping in there because of this markup now suddenly telling Google better about how these things relate to each other. So suddenly Google was able to relate my Joost.com account to my Joost.blog, my own personal blog, to my LinkedIn account. And suddenly my LinkedIn profile popped up in that knowledge panel. It's all these things all over the web that we're slowly tying together. And it's really cool to see that happening. So if you use Joost SEO and you haven't updated yet, you really should. You should play with Google's structured data testing tool a bit. The funny thing is, I'm telling you all this, but you're also at liberty to forget it, because we're going to solve it for you. Because I honestly don't think that this is something that everybody should be solving for themselves. But if you're a developer, we have full documentation on our developer portal, developer.joost.com, on how to integrate with this and how to extend it. Because I was showing you recipes, but we don't do recipes yet. So you'll have to build that a bit yourself, or wait for us to get ready, finally. Our dream is to have easy content management, like in WordPress, and also make it understandable to machines. And then also clearly define what the main entities are all over these websites and web pages. You'll realize that if you think through how this works, if you have pages that you clearly define what it is about and what's the main thing on that page, and you also clearly define that this is part of a website, and that website is also annotated everywhere, that suddenly the web becomes a lot more interesting. And I'm looking forward to what search engines can do on that. We actually have a good friend at Bing, Microsoft, a Dutch guy who was one of their principal development engineers. He spoke at JoostCon earlier this year, and we were having dinner after that, and we were talking about this. And the stuff he showed that Bing can now do based on data like this, you can literally search for things like, give me the soccer players that scored 20 times in the last in the competition this year, and it will give you those soccer players in a table based on information in this graph from everywhere, and then link you to all the different sources. It's really cool. So my promise to you today is that it will become effortless if you use Joost SEO. So I think we've solved discovery and indexing. Honestly, if you use Joost SEO or another SEO plugin, if you any of the main SEO plugins that are out there for WordPress, they solve all of this. I think that we've now solved some stuff of the ranking part. I have to be fair though, you still have to build good websites yourself and have to write good copy. Because an SEO plugin can only really do 10%. The funny part is that what we do is we take away hurdles for you to rank, then it's up to you to actually write the content and do it all. Thank you. I first have to have your picture, and then you can ask your questions. because I have to tweet about this, of course, otherwise it's not happened. Okay, any questions? If not, I'll just go on.
So the schema is being designed for voice searches, as voice searches are being more used in 2020, right?
Well, voice search is growing. I don't think voice search is necessarily growing at the expense of desktop search. It's growing next to desktop search.
Okay.
So when you are searching behind your computer, you're probably searching different things than when you're searching with voice. A lot of stuff that you do with voice is stuff like, where's the nearest bakery store, or where's the give me a good restaurant in my area. A lot more local-based queries will be voice search. Whereas if you search for how to optimize your site with schema, the chance of you doing that with voice search is so small.
Okay.
It's very funny, we talk about mobile all the time, but on Joost.com, 95% of our traffic is desktop traffic.
Okay.
It's not because our site doesn't work on mobile, but it's because when you are coming to our site, you're probably working on your site, and you're probably doing that on your desktop or laptop or wherever. So you have to think about, okay, so where is my audience for this particular site, and how will they search and adapt to that? I do think the schema is a lot more than just for voice search. They started doing that, I think in part because they figured out that it's very hard for search engines to actually understand what's on a page if they're not getting structured data for it. To try and figure out what is a recipe and to have all the ingredients listed nicely, it's actually very hard to do that with a computer program if every site has a different layout and a different design and changes its HTML structure every other day. This makes it so much easier for you. So, some of you might be old enough to remember things like micro formats and things like that, where we had all that baked into the HTML of websites. I think now with schema.org and with the way we're implementing it with JSON-LD, it's basically a separate thing from the content of your site. We're getting very close to you being able to do whatever you want on the front end of your site, and actually the JSON being a good representative of what's on that page. So it might solve some of the JavaScript rendering issues that we have, because we also provide the search engines with the content in another way that they can actually parse better. More questions?
With the last Joost update, do we need to have Gutenberg?
No, this works for everything.
Okay.
Our blocks that I showed you only work on Gutenberg. But the article markup and everything that relates to that basically works for every, whether you're using Gutenberg or not. Because we do realize that a lot of people are not ready to switch to Gutenberg yet. I have to say though, keep trying it. Our editorial team doesn't want to live without Gutenberg anymore. It really is also just getting into it. It has its weird glitches, but the classic editor does too, so it's like, yeah. I think it's getting better very, very quickly, at a pace I've never seen before in WordPress. And I've been in the WordPress community since 2006, and I've never seen us develop anything so quickly. So it's such a huge change that's happening so nicely, and so without relatively, well, it was a lot easier to make changes like this in 2006, 2007 when WordPress was still small. And now it's so huge that you get a lot of backlash for no matter what you do. It's a bit like Facebook. If Facebook changes the way it looks, people complain regardless of what it does. Even if it's an improvement for most people, and that's measurable, people will still complain because it's not what they're used to. The same is happening with Gutenberg a bit. And the beginning of Gutenberg was not good. I mean, I was very, very anti-Gutenberg a year before it released. But where it is now is actually really, I would really urge you to play with it. And if you build websites and you get into how you can use Gutenberg blocks to actually make websites better, I think you'll really like what it does. This was the WordPress or Marketing League talking. Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun to be able to come here and talk to WordPress users when you're just on the other side of the planet. So thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.